Volunteer coordinator here at the WDM Moose Jaw location, and I'd like to begin with a land acknowledgement. As a fourth-generation European settler with distant Métis ancestry, I'm humbled by the opportunity to live, work, and grow as a person on Treaty 4 territory, the homeland of the Métis. And I would like to recognize the diversity of Indigenous people and continue to rebuild our relationship through reconciliation initiatives. This presentation is about our 75 years of the WDM, so Moose Jaw location and Yorkton location are located on Treaty 4 territory, and Saskatoon and North Battleford and the corporate are located on Treaty 6. So our vision statement is a Saskatchewan where everyone belongs and histories matter. So the Western Development Museum, or WDM, was formally created in 1949, but its story is actually older than that. There have been differing stories about whose idea it was to create a museum. Whether it was the idea of one or many, what is certain that many people supported the idea and worked hard to create the museum we have today. So what was the inspiration for the new museum? During the early 1940s, there was a demand for metal to make bombs, tanks, airplanes, and other supplies. For the Second World War effort, many abandoned steam engines and threshing machines had been used to work land in the early 20th century were taken in as scrap metal. So hoarding steel and iron was made illegal in Canada on September 15th, 1942. Any person who possessed more than 227 kilograms or 500 pounds of scrap metal and steel was required to have a permit, or they would be fined up to $5,000 and imprisoned for up to 5 years, or both. So the idea for a new museum. These disappearance of these old machines did not go unnoticed. In 1942-43, members of the Battleford's Historical Society began to discuss the need for the machines to be preserved. The committee was led by W.C. Wells, a farmer and contractor, Evan Hardy, who was the Dean of Agriculture and Engineering at the University of Saskatchewan, and Joe Phelps, a farmer and member of the Saskatchewan legislature, who at the time was the Minister of Natural Resources and Industrial Development. In 1946, Phelps was able to secure a provincial government grant of $10,000 to start an agricultural museum in the Battlefords. Artifact storage was needed, so the group started to put out the word that they were collecting old farm machinery. Through the Battleford's Historical Society, the WDM arranged for the use of a stable at Fort Battleford as its first collection depot. By 1947, Phelps and the team had gathered a large collection of farm machinery from and around the province. They were quickly outgrowing their storage space. Former Royal Canadian Air Force Hangar No. 7, which was located at the North Battle Airport, was acquired for storage. Most of the buildings that housed the WDM in the early days were hangars that had been used during the Second World War. Many of them from the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan, so the BCATP, which had bases around the province: Swift Current, Mossbank, Saskatoon, Prince Albert, Davidson, North Battleford, Cairn, Yorkton, Defoe, Assiniboia, Weyburn, Estevan, and Regina. The Mossbank hangar that was then moved to North Battleford is still a part of that museum building. With so much equipment coming in, it was time to keep a record of it. On December 11th, 1947, the WDM recorded its first entry in its accession register, which is where artifact donations are tracked. The first record was for a 15-horsepower International Harvester gasoline engine, which was used in the Free Sailor area. As the word spread about the collection of farm machinery, more artifacts like the American Able steam engine pictured here were added to the collection. Space was needed to restore and keep more equipment. In 1948, a storage and restoration depot was opened in Saskatoon at the corner of Duchess Street and 9th Avenue. Another Saskatoon facility was acquired for storage. It was a British Commonwealth Air Training Plan, or BCATP, site on the corner of 33rd Street and Avenue A, which today is Alwild, I can never say that name, Drive in Saskatoon. So it's official. The Western Development Museum Act was passed in Saskatchewan legislation on April 2nd, 1949. Originally, the WDM was set up to collect artifacts from Western Canada, but this focus eventually shifted to Saskatchewan only. April 1949 was a busy time. The first board of directors were appointed and held their first meeting. On April 28th, a provincial annual grant was received in the amount of $15,000. Today, the WDM continues to receive funding from the provincial government to help with operations. The WDM North Battleford had been informally welcoming visitors since 1947. In 1949, the WDM Saskatoon opened to the public for the first time. Both museums were located in old Second World War hangars at their local airports. On June 15th, an admission fee of 25 cents per person was introduced to the WDM North Battleford with a maximum of $1 per family. Children under 12 were free, as were artifact donors. For schools, children up to 16 years were free when accompanied by a teacher or supervisor, and starting August 1st, the WDM Saskatoon started charging the same fee as the WDM North Battleford. Also in 1949, the WDM made its first foray into films when artifacts were used for the filming of Prairie Conquest, a film made for the National Grain Company by Winnipeg filmmaker Francis Holmes. Taking over 2 years to complete, the film debuted in 1952. The WDM would continue to work with film productions throughout the years. For the safety of the artifacts, today the WDM only has a small collection of hands-on artifacts that can be used in this way. These are the same items that are used in WDM demonstrations. The WDM was part of film productions, mostly notable in the 1950s and 1960s. In 1957, the WDM developed a new service providing equipment and machines for films produced by the Provincial Photographic Services, the Department of Travel and Information, and the National Film Board of Canada. The WDM made good use of the old Second World War hangars that were located around the province. Many of these had been part of the BCATP and were now sitting empty. Besides having storage in hangars in North Battleford, Saskatoon, and Yorkton, the WDM also had storage hangars in Swift Current, Moose Jaw, and Weyburn. In 1951, BCATP hangar number 35 at Swift Current was dismantled and transferred to Saskatoon, where it was reconstructed on 11th Street West. The WDM Saskatoon officially moved to this new home in 1952. Since the late 1940s, the WDM had a collection depot in Second World War hangar at the Yorkton Airport. As the hangar filled with artifacts, there was interest in having this location open to the public. The WDM Yorkton opened on June 17th, 1951. Many artifacts were moved from a storage hangar in Moose Jaw to display in Yorkton. In 1953, George Shepard was named the WDM's first curator based in Saskatoon. Shepard was a retired rancher from Maple Creek with a passion for Western Canadian history. He enjoyed the position so much that he stayed on as curator until October 1977, when he retired at the age of 87. In recognition of his years of service to the province, Shepherd was presented with an honorary Doctor of Laws in 1976 by the University of Saskatchewan. In his honor, the research library located in the WDM's corporate office was named the Dr. George Shepherd Library. (1955) was a big year in Saskatchewan. People around the province celebrated the Golden Jubilee, which marked 50 years since the province's creation. WDM staff met with the Golden Jubilee committees in Saskatoon and Yorkton to plan how the WDM could be involved. After doing a 3-day test run in October 1954, the WDM Saskatoon launched Pioneera from July 4th to 9th, 1955. The 6-day show included demonstrations of steam and gas-powered farm equipment, blacksmithing, musical entertainment, and new exhibits. The 3-day test run of Pioneera in October 1954 was filmed and made into a documentary by the National Film Board of Canada. Pioneera was the first time that Whitecap Dakota Nation took part in a WDM Saskatoon event. They would continue to set up camp and do demonstrations at Pioneera until 1969. Despite having rain on 2 of the 6 days, overall Pioneera attendance was more than 25,000 people. On August 17, 1955, the Yorkton Threshermen's Club staged their first threshing show at the WDM Yorkton. The show was called Pioneera Day, an Old Time Threshermen's Reunion. Besides harvest demonstrations, the day featured Ukrainian and Doukhobor displays and a street dance. The show continues today, known as the Threshermen Show and Seniors Festival, and it is organized by the club along with the WDM. The show was a great success. However, even the best shows may have hiccups, as shown in this photo of a Gar Scott steam engine in trouble. The WDM Yorkton Threshermen Show and Seniors Festival is the longest running WDM program. The WDM North Battleford held their first show, the Threshermen's Reunion, over 3 days in October 1956. The show was held in partnership with the North Battleford's JCs and 4-H clubs. It was in 1955 that the WDM's first volunteer clubs began to organize. That year, both the Yorkton Threshermen's Club and the Pioneers Threshermen's Club at the WDM Saskatoon formed. In 1957, the Women's Auxiliary to the Western Development Museum began at the WDM Saskatoon. Since those early days, the WDM has benefited from the talents of many volunteer groups who formed because of the WDM, such as the WDM North Battleford Volunteer Association and the Boomtown Volunteer Association in Saskatoon. We are also very grateful to the many clubs who formed outside the WDM but who have volunteered with us, such as the Vintage Aircraft Restorers in Moose Jaw, the York Colony Quilters in Yorkton, the Saskatchewan Blacksmiths Association, and many others. The WDM is also fortunate to have the support of many people who volunteer as individuals and not as part of a club. These volunteers fill many important roles. Thank you to all of them, past and present. This year, the WDM had over 500 active volunteers across our 5 locations, giving 21,372 hours. In 1956, the Saskatchewan Tourism Advisory Council cited the 3 WDMs as the #1 tourist attraction in the province. This is the first of many times that the WDM would be chosen as the favorite tourist destination in Saskatchewan. The WDM was a place to be in the 1950s and 60s, with increased attendance, a growing collection, and increasing notoriety. The WDM staff and board began to think about expanding. In 1956, they dreamed of expanding the WDM Saskatoon with interior exhibits, a First Nations encampment, and frontier village. In 1957, committees were formed in North Battleford and Yorkton to discuss the expansion of those museums. In Yorkton, City Council was approached about allocating land for a new museum closer to the city. The committee in North Battleford was tasked with finding a desirable new location and then approaching the city about moving. In 1960, 60 acres of land was acquired for a new WDM in North Battleford. In 1961, a Second World War hangar was moved from Mossbank and reassembled on the site as the new museum building. Construction then began on buildings for a heritage village. The opening of the new location was planned to coincide with the city of North Battleford's 50th anniversary celebrations in 1963. The WDM North Battleford opened at its new location at the intersection of Highways 5, which is now Highway 16, and Highway 40 on May 25th, 1963. Over the years, more buildings were added to the village. These included artifact buildings such as the Hamelin House and Marjan Shoe Repair Shop, while replica buildings like the Fire Hall and Co-op were built. Today, the Heritage Farm and Village sits on 100 acres with over 30 homes and businesses representing the boom years of the 1920s. Inside the museum building are smaller exhibits, including an impressive collection of Canadian-built steam engines and the 100 Years of Saskatchewan History exhibit. A museum-wide membership program was launched in October 1961. The annual individual membership fee was set at $5, and a family membership was priced at $10 per year. There was even a museum life membership for $100. With so much going on at the museums, in 1964, staff were hired to handle financial and administrative duties. Although based out of the WDM Saskatoon, the new staff assisted with operations at all three museums. To celebrate Canada's centennial in 1967, the WDM mounted a traveling exhibit of steam engines, antique vehicles, and small artifacts to visit communities across Saskatchewan. The WDM traveling exhibit visited 30 communities around the province and was free of charge. Attendance at WDMs in 1967 hit 158,708 visitors. By 1971, new locations had been found in Saskatoon and Yorkton for the WDM. In Saskatoon, although the WDM saw an area in Diefenbaker Park, the city of Saskatoon offered land beside the exhibition grounds. Instead of constructing an outdoor village as originally hoped, an indoor village street called Boomtown would be created to represent what a small town in Saskatchewan might have looked like in 1910. On July 11, 1972, the WDM Saskatoon was opened by Premier Alan Balcony. The Boomtown Street exhibit consists of replica buildings plus one artifact building. St. Peter's Anglican Church was moved to the WDM from Yonge. The schoolhouse is a replica building made from original plans used to build one-room schoolhouses in Saskatchewan in the early 20th century. Boomtown is still the main attraction at the WDM Saskatoon. Other exhibits include a transportation gallery of antique vehicles, an exhibit about innovative vehicle designs, and a gallery of vintage agricultural equipment, as well as a Saskatchewan story following a fictional settler family through 100 years of the province's history. The WDM Saskatoon is also home to the Boomtown Cafe, which is open to the public. In Yorkton, a spot along Highway 14, which is today known as Highway 16A, was selected for the new WDM location. A sod turning ceremony took place on September 8, 1971. Construction got underway on a fully heated 30 by 30 meter building. The new location also had spacious grounds for a demonstration area and room for an outdoor agricultural exhibit featuring an impressive collection of steam and gas engines. WDM Board Chair Harold Latrace, Yorkton Mayor Alan Bailey, and MLA John Brocklebank were on hand for grand opening ceremonies on September 13th, 1972. They are seen here at the old Yorkton Bell Tower in front of the museum. The new museum building was built at a cost of $115,000. Showcase rooms were featured displaying artifacts brought to Canada by immigrants from Britain, Germany, Sweden, Ukraine, and more. Today, updated versions of some of these rooms are displayed along with 100 Years of Saskatchewan History exhibit and In a Prairie Attic, Blanton Family Toys exhibit featuring a collection of more than 200 toys and books from the early 20th century. In 1984, an addition was added to give the WDM Yorkton more administrative, educational, curatorial, storage, and shop space. In 1973, the WDM was one of the first museums in Canada to join a national program to create computerized records for the museum artifacts across the country. In 1996, the WDM moved to our own collections database. To keep up with changing technologies, in 2019, the WDM changed to a new collections database called Argus, which makes the collection accessible to the public to search online. A $1 million government grant was secured in 1973 for the construction of a new WDM in Moose Jaw. The theme of this museum would be transportation. The new museum would be located on Diefenbaker Drive near the intersection of Highways 1 and 2. A ceremonial saw turning took place on May 9, 1974, using a steam engine and plow. The WDM Moose Jaw was built in the same design as the WDM Saskatoon. The size was needed to accommodate some of the WDM's largest artifacts, planes, trains, and automobiles. As the building neared completion in 1975, artifacts were moved from the WDMs in Saskatoon and North Battleford. Artifacts would be displayed in land, water, rail, and air transportation galleries. There's actually a fun fact. Maybe the only artifact to be flown to the WDM, the 1929 Gypsy Moth airplane, was flown from Regina and landed in an empty field next to the WDM Moose Jaw in 1979 to become part of the collection and put on display. And on June 26, 1976, the WDM Moose Jaw was opened. The WDM Moose Jaw's galleries are filled with an impressive array of transportation artifacts from locomotives to ferries to snowplows. In 1992, the Snowbirds Gallery opened in collaboration with the Royal Canadian Air Force's 15-wing Moose Jaw and the Snowbirds, the elite flying demonstrations team. The WDM has plans to reimagine this gallery in coming years. Enclosed exhibit space at all 4 locations totals 23,225 square meters, or about 500,000 square feet across all of our locations. In 1975, the WDM introduced one of its formal school programs, the Grade 4 Harvest Demonstration. In response to requests from teachers, the WDM Saskatoon partnered with Saskatoon Public Schools to create the program. In 2000, the WDM North Battleford began offering the program as well. Since 1975, over 100,000 grade 4 students have been educated about early Saskatchewan farming through this program. The WDM offers a wide variety of curriculum connected school programs on topics ranging from holiday traditions to building energy-efficient homes. As a part of celebrations marking Saskatchewan's 75th anniversary in 1980, the WDM took on a project to recognize Saskatchewan's innovators. Made in Saskatchewan exhibits for each museum location were researched, designed, and built to showcase all patented Saskatchewan inventions from 1905 to 1980. An index of Saskatchewan's inventions was also printed. The WDM staged one of its most ambitious events in 1982. Colony Trek was an 11-day wagon trek from Moose Jaw to Saskatoon. It was organized to commemorate the 1882 trek of temperance colonists from the end of the rail line at Moose Jaw to the new town site at Saskatoon. Months of planning preceded the event. The oldest trekker was 82 years. The youngest was 4. Over 30 wagons with participants from across Western Canada and Nova Scotia, along with 140 horses and 205 people, reenacted the 260-kilometer journey. Colony Trek, 2 documentaries were made about the Colony Trek, one by CTV and one by CBC. The documentary made by CBC would go on to win a Golden Sheaf Award at the Yorkton Film Festival and the Saskatchewan Cable Television Association Award for Best Video Production in Saskatchewan. The WDM also produced a book about the trek. In 1992, some of the original trekkers organized a reunion trek that traveled from the WDM Saskatoon to the WDM North Battleford. With a larger collection and more programs to offer, more space was needed for staff. In 1984, the WDM's Provincial Service Centre opened in Saskatoon. The 12,700 square meter building provided a new home for artifacts that were still being stored in the Second World War hangars. By 1987, the WDM was able to vacate the last off-site storage hangar. The Provincial Service Centre also had administrative offices, collections, exhibits, and research, the Dr. George Shepard Library, and the shop space for exhibit construction and training courses. In 1993, a conservation lab was opened to better care for artifacts. At the time, it was one of the largest conservation labs in Canada. It was also in 1993 that the Provincial Service Centre was renamed the WDM Curatorial Center to better reflect the museum's functions of artifact collection, conservation, and exhibit design. In 2018, the WDM Curatorial Center was renamed as the WDM Corporate Office to reflect the curatorial and administrative functions that takes place there. In the 1980s and early 1990s, the WDM was able to secure grants for museum improvements. Additions were made to the WDM North Battleford and Yorkton buildings. New permanent exhibits were added in Moose Jaw, and renovations were made to the WDM Saskatoon. The Heritage Village in North Battleford continued to grow with addition of a 1928 Saskatchewan wheat pool elevator from Keatley. In 1986 and 1987, a barn and farmhouse were added to create a farmstead. With the addition of the farm, the theme of the WDM North Battleford was updated to the Heritage Farm and Village. To mark the WDM's 50th anniversary, a series of articles written and prepared by Leslie Newman and Noel Gross appeared in weekly newspapers in Yorkton, Saskatoon, and Regina. The articles featured interesting stories about artifacts from the WDM collection. In 2001, these articles were compiled into the book Museum Gold's Treasures from the Collection. In the late 1990s, WDM staff began discussing ways to recognize Saskatchewan's centennial in 2005. Plans were made for the WDM's most ambitious project in years, the creation of the Winning the Prairie Gamble exhibit. Unique exhibits would be built at each WDM, showcasing 100 years of Saskatchewan history. This photo shows the construction of the 100 years of Saskatchewan history timeline at the WDM Moose Jaw. Similar timelines are also part of the WDM North Battleford and Yorkton. In 2005, Phase 1 of Winning the Prairie Gamble opened. This multi-year project saw the last phases completed in 2012. Exhibit themes varied between locations, ranging from the history of Medicare and immigration to the natural wonders of weather and resources. Shown in this photo is the Phoenix Log Hauler in the exhibit at the WDM North Battleford. In April of 2015, the WDM welcomed its 10 millionth visitor since officially opening to the public in 1949. This number included general visitors, school children, and people attending special events throughout the years. Another highlight for 2015 was the launch of a new logo and tagline. In September, former WDM CEO Joan Champ and former board chair Ken Azapardi unveiled the new logo and the tagline, Saskatchewan Inspired. The vintage model style logo replaced the wheel and wheat logo used since the 1970s. This was followed in 2017 by a new vision statement for the WDM, a Saskatchewan where everyone belongs and histories matter. Achieving this vision involves sharing stories that reflect the diversity of our province and our experiences. By creating opportunities for people to come together, we hope they gain an understanding and appreciation for diverse experiences and get a positive sense of place, which helps them feel like they belong. With the new vision statement, the WDM started to collect more artifacts and tell more stories from underrepresented groups in our communities. In 2017, the Saskatchewan 2SLGBTQ+ history collection was launched with the goal of creating a permanent collection of objects that tell stories about this group in Saskatchewan. In Moose Jaw, from May 13th to July 14th of 2024, the 2SLGBTQ+ Senior Storytelling on the Prairies portrait exhibit, which is a traveling exhibit, will be here, which is about, for the most of the 20th century, 2SLGBTQ+ people in Saskatchewan remained closeted, living in fear of societal discrimination and laws designed to criminalize them and their partners. So you can read about the coming out, falling in love, heartache and loss, work, travel, family, leisure, and activism, to contemporary concerns about elder care, aging, and safe housing from 12 2SLGBTQ+ seniors in this powerful portrait exhibit. We also new artifacts from Saskatchewan's East Asian and South Asian communities were also collected. A new partnership with the Saskatchewan African Canadian Heritage Museum and the Melfort and District Museum in 2022 resulted in a virtual exhibit about Dr. Alfred Shawd, one of the first documented African Canadians to settle in the area that would become Saskatchewan. On September 15, 2017, the WDM Board of Directors adopted a statement of intent regarding the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. The WDM committed to adopting the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action in our strategic plan and to build partnerships with Saskatchewan's Indigenous communities. The WDM began renewing old relationships and building new ones. An example is the new partnership with the Kanawemic Child and Family Services in North Battleford. They have offered traditional teachings and set up teepees in the Heritage Farm and Village since 2021. Following the board's adoption of the Statement of Intent, Dr. Elizabeth Scott, WDM's Chief Curator, Director of Collections and Research, prepared Inclusivity Report, Reconciliation and Diversity at the WDM, outlining ways the WDM can respond to the TRC calls to actions released in 2019. The WDM partnered with the University of Saskatchewan and Spirit Wrestler Productions to open the temporary exhibit. Dukapur Living Book Project, 120 Years in Saskatchewan at the WDM Saskatoon from June to September 2019. The exhibit featured artifacts and an immersive soundscape that recreated a Dubakor prayer service. In 2020, this exhibit received the Governor General's History Award for Excellence in Museums History Alive. In 2020, the WDM's collection development plan is released. This was the first formal acquisitions plan in WDM history. The plan guides decision-making by defining the criteria for accepting artifacts, removing artifacts, and how limited resources will be allocated in the overall care and maintenance of the WDM's collection. 2020 is likely a year that none of us will forget. COVID-19 changed our world. The museum was closed from mid-March through early August 2020. Extensive planning was undertaken to decide what modifications needed to be made to ensure that visitors were safe and comfortable. We also found new ways to deliver programs, including offering virtual programs like our 2020 and 2021 summer camps and virtual coffee club, a program that we still offer today. The WDM and Whitecap Dakota Nation reestablished their relationship that began in 1955. The result was co-curated permanent exhibit, Wapa Sai Oyete, Living Our Culture, Sharing Our Community at Pioneera, 1955 to 69. This exhibit opened on October 11th, 2022 at the WDM Saskatoon. Through this project, Whitecap elders, knowledge keepers, leadership, and staff shared their memories and perspectives, ensuring that their voices heard in this exhibit. In 2023, the WDM and Whitecap Dakota Nation were honored to receive the Museums Association of Saskatchewan's Award of Merit for this exhibit. Keeping heritage skills alive is something that the WDM has long supported. Over the years, we have offered a variety of courses and classes. One of the most popular courses is Introduction to Blacksmithing, started in 1988 by Rick Dixon and Leslie Newman at the WDM's Provincial Service Center in Saskatoon. The course has trained over 1,000 blacksmiths, including many who volunteer at the WDM. In 2023, this course received provincial recognition when it was honored with a Heritage Saskatchewan Heritage Award in the Living Heritage category for keeping the art of blacksmith alive. The WDM Steam Traction Engine Operation course is its longest running course. After informal steam engine training began in 1955, it was decided that there was enough interest for a course. The first official course was given by Fred Lay of the WDM and the Pioneer Threshermen's Club at the WDM Saskatoon in 1959. The Steam Traction Engine Operation Training course has been reworked over the years to ensure that it meets provincial safety standards, and it is still offered today. The WDM also has Steam Locomotive Operation Training course offered at the WDM Moose Jaw using the K+S Potash Canada Shortline 101 locomotive steam engine. Since 1978, visitors to the WDM Moose Jaw can take a ride on Saskatchewan's only operating steam train. This 1914 locomotive was donated to the WDM in 1958 after being used in sodium sulfate mines in Alaska and by Suffolk. In 2018, K+S Potash Canada signed an agreement to sponsor the short line until 2028. WDM wheelwright Tony Burlack and Education Extension Coordinator Leslie Newman developed the first wheelwrighting course in 1975. The course proved popular. By the 1990s, students were coming from as far as Georgia, USA, and Mexico to attend. Over the years, the WDM trained hundreds of students in the art of wheelwrighting. The last introduction to wheelwrighting course was offered in 2016. It was led by longtime volunteer Roy Musgrove and wheelwright Dorian Disestein, who both took their initial training at the WDM. Before I wrap up this presentation up, I'm going to share some of the famous people who have visited the WDM over the years. We've hosted Canadian Prime Ministers and Governor Generals, members of the British royal family, ambassadors to Canada, actors, athletes, and even a celebrity chef. Probably the most famous person to visit the WDM was Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, along with her husband, His Royal Highness Prince Philip. They visited Pioneera at the WDM Saskatoon on July 22nd, 1959. The Queen spent time visiting the exhibits with curator George Shepard and taking in the entertainment with local dignitaries. That year, Pioneera was dubbed the show fit for a queen. 31 years later, the Queen's younger sister, Her Royal Highness Princess Margaret, visited Saskatchewan as part of the province's 75th anniversary celebrations. The WDM Saskatoon was chosen as the site for the province's official dinner for the princess. She is pictured here with the former WDM Executive Director, Dr. Terence Heath. Prime Minister John Diefenbaker visited the WDM on several occasions. In 1958, during his first year as Prime Minister, he visited the WDM Yorktons and Saskatoon. On July 1st, he was in Saskatoon to blow the steam whistle to kick off Pioneera. On August 14th, he appeared at Historama at the WDM Yorkton. This was part of the City of Yorkton's 75th anniversary celebrations. After his time as Prime Minister was over, Diefenbaker still came back. He toured the WDM Saskatoon with progressive conservative leader Robert Stanfield, who is seated next to Diefenbaker in this June 15th, 1968 photo. Museum manager Gordon Wilson is standing beside the car. A few years later, on April 19, 1977, Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau visited the WDM Saskatoon. Trudeau was in Saskatchewan on a 3-day tour promoting Canadian unity. He spoke to a crowd of nearly 500 people from the railway station platform on Boomtown Street. These are just a few highlights of the WDM's long history as a keeper of Saskatchewan's collective heritage. If you'd like to learn more about the WDM's history, you can check out the WDM history timeline on our website. Thank you for joining me today. And the WDM holds over 75,000 artifacts, along with over 500,000 archival photograph and library materials in trust for the people of Saskatchewan. So thank you, everybody, for attending our virtual coffee club. Thank you for sharing your stories and your questions and comments. It's really awesome to engage with you afterwards. So I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and you join us for our next coffee club on May 23rd. Thanks so much.